Because of TikTok, new creative ideas are being spread across the globe with millions of people each day, and if something resonates enough, it becomes a full-on trend. The core phenomenon has been wild to watch, as it seems like each week a new and obscure aesthetic will pop up out of nowhere. The fact that my For You page is full of pirates, mermaids, vampires, fairies, and mushrooms says just as much about me as it does our collective consciousness this past year. With the help of an algorithm that rewards creativity and pushing boundaries, TikTok has escalated an already bubbling turn to escapism since the world was put on pause in 2020, and we were all forced to create our own entertainment and worlds from the discomfort of our homes. To understand this sudden shift, we must look to the past to understand its origins. Ultimately, the cottagecore phenomenon is just a reincarnation of pastoralism, which originated with the Greeks and continued to cycle in and out of fashion for years, most notably finding its way to Marie Antoinette's court in the later years of her reign. She created a faux rural cottage on the lavish grounds of the Palace of Versailles to escape royal responsibility and the impending French Revolution. While the country was falling into turmoil around her, she longed to escape to a simpler life, wearing plain white and puffy gowns very similar to those still in fashion today. The elitism and irony of an inept queen longing to be a simple milkmaid on a farm is not lost on many who critique the cottagecore movement as tone-deaf today, saying it's tasteless for wealthy and privileged people to be able to don the aesthetic of those less fortunate and play dress-up as some of the lowest paid and least respected members of our society, farm workers, many of whom are immigrants denied basic human rights. Truthfully, the whole idea of escaping to a cottage in the woods and having tea parties for fairies is an unaffordable fever dream for most who fantasize about it. As cottagecore has risen to prominence, it has become obvious there is a lack of diversity in how the media portrays the trend. If you look deeper than just a quick search on Pinterest, you will find countless of beautiful people of color, as well as creators of all identities, shapes, and sizes embracing the cottagecore aesthetic. But these amazing trendsetters rarely get the visibility and credit they deserve. To shed light on this discrepancy, I had the pleasure of interviewing 3 incredible women to talk about how they feel about and are responding to the lack of diversity shown in the cottagecore aesthetic to the general public. Noemi Seriou is a social media manager, pastry chef, artist, and founder of CottageCore Black Folks, an Instagram and TikTok account that promotes Black creators in the cottagecore scene. Noemi, how do you feel personally connected to the cottagecore style? Well, it depends on which cottagecore style you're talking about. Most people envision a very flowery European fashion when they think of cottagecore style. The cottagecore style I grew up on was Caribbean. Our version of the puffy cottagecore dress was a long and wide cloth that could be worn as a skirt or a dress. Our version of the headscarf was an intricately twisted head wrap. Cottagecore has always had this aesthetic in my mind because it's what I grew up on. That being said, I do love European cottagecore styles as well. The dresses always remind me of some of my favorite princesses like Snow White, Aurora, and Cinderella. How do you feel about the lack of diversity in the trend? There is no lack of diversity in the cottagecore community. There's a lack of awareness. The Instagram hashtag CottageCoreBlackGirls has over 1,000 posts alone. I'm in a Facebook group called CottageCore but Make It Curvy with nearly 40,000. Even CottageCore Black Folks, which doesn't have a focus on the LGBT community, rebranded our whole account to be more inclusive of Black, trans, and non-binary followers. So the problem isn't a lack of diversity. It's a lack of awareness. Big platforms need to be more conscious of how they contribute to the lack of awareness. It can be easy to place blame on the algorithms, which are well known for the suppression of Black content, but when this is used as an excuse to not take responsibility, they remain part of the problem. Big accounts should be aware of if they're following any people of color, different body shapes and sizes, and different styles within the aesthetic. What made you want to start your platform, CottageCore Black Folks? Spite. I was tired of never seeing people who looked like me in the aesthetic I felt at home in. I had a Pinterest board I had been working on for a while with pictures of Black women in the cottagecore aesthetic. One day I read a comment referring to Black people in cottagecore as slavecore. That lit a fire in me. I downloaded all the pictures off of Pinterest and opened a new Instagram account to post them to. This is how CottageCore Black Girls was born. The account grew quickly as more CottageCore Black women found it and sent in their pictures, which I happily posted to the account. One day, a non-binary member mentioned that they wish everything were a little less gendered. CottageCore Black Girls was about to open a brother account, CottageCore Black Boys, but that comment gave me pause. After a quick community discussion and vote, we discontinued CottageCore Black Boys and rebranded CottageCore Black Girls into CottageCore Black Folks, so all Black CottageCore individuals could find a home with this account. What has the response been like to the account? In the beginning, it was overwhelmingly positive. It was almost a shock to the senses to go from scavenging for the occasional Black creator to having them reach out and ask to be featured by the dozens. The growth, love, and community poured into this account was phenomenal. Then we got a little too big for white comfort. It started with occasional slavecore and cottagecore as a European aesthetic comments. Even other people of color would reach out upset that we were exclusively posting Black individuals. Then came genuine hate comments and DMs, which were difficult to receive. Now that we've made it clear that we are here to stay and no one will scare us off, we get almost no negative feedback like that anymore. Instead, we've been dealing with a more nefarious type of anti-Blackness, infiltration of Black spaces. CottageCore Black Folks is known for getting most of our content directly from our tags. This makes it easier for Black creators to be seen by us, since Black-centric hashtags tend to get overtaken by non-Black creators using hashtag generators carelessly. But recently, there has been a trend of white women tagging our account directly in their posts as a way to get more views, essentially inserting their white faces in a Black space. But our community is tight-knit and quick to correct wayward behavior of our visitors. We don't let the adversity get in the way of celebrating our community and the beautiful creators who help make it so special. Anya Moss is an accomplished fashion blogger, musician, director, and influencer with impeccable style and incredible visuals. Her film series Black Women Are Soft Too on YouTube features different Black women that embrace their femininity, showing the world that, well, Black women are soft too. I have been following your blog for a few months and absolutely adore your visuals and unique style. How did you get into fashion blogging? The story of how I got into fashion blogging is a bit of an accidental one. I moved to the UK on my 22nd birthday to pursue a career in finance. I qualified as a chartered accountant, but failed to gain relevant employment as I was lacking in UK work experience. While waiting to catch a lucky break, I found myself binge-watching reality TV shows to take my mind off being unemployed. This would turn out to be a blessing in disguise as I stumbled upon Fashion Bloggers on E!, a show that focused on women who told beautiful stories using imagery. This moment reignited my love for art and set me on a path that would change my life for good. Rather than pay my rent that month, I opted to buy a camera instead and began teaching myself photography by watching YouTube tutorials and putting a lot of what I learned into practice. Not long after, I gained employment in a bank working in finance. I continued to harness my passion for photography alongside being in full-time employment. I utilized most of my evenings and weekends practicing and sharing my work online. Soon, enough brands began noticing me and were willing to pay me to create content for them. And in the summer of 2017, I quit my role at the bank to focus on being a full-time creative. I have worked with the likes of Gucci, Carolina Herrera, Giorgio Armani, Penhaligon's London, and Viktor and Rolf, to name a few. I was a brand ambassador for Pandora UK in 2019, which was also the same year I won the Cosmopolitan Best Fashion Influencer Award. I have since expanded upon my work, releasing my debut single, In Your Eyes, in January 2021, with an EP to follow. I also debuted my first film series titled Black Women Are Soft Too, which focuses on highlighting the softness that exists in Black women, thereby relaying their humanity. How would you describe your personal style? I would describe my personal style as timeless and romantic. I have a hashtag I use on Instagram to share my style, which is hashtag #mytimelessromance. Do you feel personally connected to the cottagecore aesthetic? And if so, why? I'd say my style lends itself to the cottagecore aesthetic as I'm a true vintage lover, often surrounded by vintage pieces. As for a connection, I've not focused on that, but more so self-expression in a particular moment. And if it so happens to lean into CottageCore, I'm happy to share my own version of it as I see it. How do you feel about the lack of diversity in the CottageCore trend online? When you type in CottageCore on Google, 99.9% of the images that come up are of white people alone. I for one know and follow a number of Black women in the CottageCore scene and know there's a community of Black women in CottageCore, and yet the bias reeks through with Black women at a disadvantage when it comes to visibility. What was the inspiration behind, and what motivated you to create your Black Women Are Soft 2 film series? The series came about when I noticed from personal experience and other Black women like myself that Black women are usually portrayed as being attached to their trauma, and in most instances doesn't leave room to celebrate their other sides, which includes softness. The strong Black woman narrative, which is always being pushed, taps into her trauma but without any recourse to ease her pain and struggle. Black women are usually left out of discussions that cater to softness, like wellness and luxury, as if to say we can't partake in it. So much so, it's created this perception where many Black women don't even see themselves deserving of a softer life. Black Women Are Soft 2 aims to change this narrative by highlighting the softness that exists in Black women despite any trauma they may have faced. And like any other woman, we too deserve to rest in our softness. Can you tell me about some of the women you featured so far? Yes, so far I've featured 2 women. The first being Dominique Saint Germain. She's a lovely artist from Haiti whose work very much lends itself to the CottageCore aesthetic. She's the creator of Little Wanderer's Diary. I chose to feature her first because she embodies softness, the sort that many media outlets don't tend to associate with Black women. Dominique is very in tune with her soft side. She embraces nature, life, and her passions, and she does it so effortlessly. Marie Zumanigi is an actor based in New York. She's a Black woman who embodies softness too. Like Dominique, she embraces nature too. She's surrounded by many beautiful and flourishing houseplants, all thanks to her care. Her soft side radiates and makes me want to tap into more of my soft side too, and I hope encourages other Black women to do the same. What's coming up next for you? I've just released my second single, Miracle Man, which is the story of how I broke free from a nauseous relationship. It's available on all streaming platforms. Lauren is an incredible CottageCore creator who has garnered a large following on TikTok with her dreamy short films and outfit videos. Her style is beautifully feminine and a unique blend of vintage, fantasy, princess core, academia, and of course, CottageCore. Lauren, how do you feel personally connected to the CottageCore style? CottageCore has always resonated deeply with me. The strong connections to nature, simplistic living, being reliant on oneself, and general peacefulness of the aesthetic have always been near and dear to my heart. A huge part of the aesthetic is also being ethically and environmentally conscious, which is fundamentally important and a personal passion of mine. How do you feel about the lack of diversity in the trend? When this aesthetic first arrived on the scene, it was very Eurocentric, but I've been increasingly seeing people of color highlighted in CottageCore more and more. The CottageCore community in itself is very inclusive, at least in my opinion, with its members always eager to educate and accommodate. What has your experience been as a Black woman on social media? Being a Black woman on social media is a double-edged sword. Personally, the community I have chosen to surround myself with is fiercely supportive, but when my content ends up in the general population of the internet, it can be met with ridicule and criticism. For the most part, it's a positive experience, but taking social media breaks is so important for mental health as to not get wrapped up in ingesting so many opinions about yourself. I love your TikTok saying your husband helped you find the beauty in yourself. Can you tell us more about that journey? To be honest, I still don't find myself particularly beautiful, but he has helped me feel more comfortable expressing my authentic self, which has helped me see that I don't need to be perfect or confine myself to one box. Having this partnership and support behind me has been life-changing. I'm interviewing Onyi Mas, who created a film series called Black Women Are Soft 2. Do you connect with that message? Absolutely. I think for too long the media has portrayed Black women as strong, resilient, abrasive, loud, aggressive, and it's been so detrimental to so many Black women who feel as though they need to fit into that box or else they are ostracized if they don't. Those prejudgments also spill over to preconceived notions of Black women from their employers, potential partners, friends, and colleagues. And Black women are not a monolith. They are multifaceted human beings who deserve the space to express themselves as they see fit.
Just